Have you ever noticed how the moment a man walks away, suddenly he becomes more desirable? It's not magic, it's psychology. When you stop chasing and start choosing yourself, everything changes. Women sense when a man values his peace over persuasion, and that shift creates instant attraction. In this video, we're breaking down why walking away isn't weakness, it's the ultimate power move. When a man chooses emotional detachment, it doesn't mean he stops caring. It means he stops clinging, and that difference changes everything. Women are naturally intuitive. They can sense when a man's world revolves around them, and ironically, that's when attraction begins to fade. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it's calmness. It's the ability to stay centered even when emotions are high, to not let another person's behavior dictate your peace or self-worth. That energy is rare, and in a world where most people are desperate to be seen, the one who doesn't beg for validation stands out effortlessly. When a man is emotionally detached, he communicates something powerful without saying a word. I don't need you to feel complete. That silent confidence pulls people in. Women are drawn to the man who seems grounded, the one who doesn't get lost in the chaos of feelings or chase constant reassurance. He's not trying to impress, he's just present. This presence carries a calm authority that says, I can walk away if I'm not respected. And that sense of inner control is what makes him magnetic. You see, emotional detachment shifts the balance of power. When a man is overly invested, he becomes predictable. His behavior revolves around keeping her happy, often at the expense of his own boundaries. That kind of emotional availability can feel overwhelming. It removes the sense of challenge that keeps attraction alive. But when a man knows when to pull back, to give space instead of pressure, something interesting happens. The woman starts to lean in. She begins to wonder what makes him so composed, so sure of himself. Curiosity replaces comfort, and desire replaces control. Detachment doesn't mean ignoring emotions, it means mastering them. It's emotional discipline, the ability to respond, not react. Most men lose attraction not because they lack looks, success, or effort, but because they lose composure the moment things get uncertain. They text more, call more, explain more, and that energy comes across as neediness. But the man who practices emotional detachment understands that silence can say more than words ever will. He knows when to step back and let things unfold, and in doing so, he communicates strength, the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Women subconsciously associate emotional control with stability. It tells them that this man won't fall apart when life gets messy, that if she pulls away, he won't crumble. He'll simply continue living his life with purpose. This stability is deeply attractive because it contrasts the emotional volatility many people display in relationships. It shows maturity, confidence, and self-respect. It's not about playing games or pretending to be uninterested. It's about having such a solid sense of self that someone else's approval doesn't define your worth. The truth is, emotional detachment gives a man leverage, not to manipulate, but to maintain balance. When a man can walk away without resentment, it proves he's not enslaved by emotions. He values connection, but he values peace more. That's the kind of energy women can't resist, because it feels rare, secure, and self-contained. Emotional detachment is like quiet confidence. It doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, and it doesn't need to convince anyone of its value. It simply is. In relationships, the emotionally detached man doesn't seek control through dominance or distance. He gains it through restraint. He listens, observes, and chooses his actions wisely. He doesn't react to every shift in mood or tone because he's not operating from fear. He's operating from understanding. That understanding tells him that attraction isn't sustained by emotional chaos. It's sustained by emotional polarity, the masculine calm against the feminine storm. And when a woman feels that calm presence, she naturally gravitates toward it because it provides the emotional grounding she craves. Emotional detachment is not about withdrawal, it's about wisdom. It's the wisdom to know when to engage and when to step back, when to express and when to observe. The man who has mastered this balance doesn't lose himself in anyone, and that's exactly why others lose themselves thinking about him. Scarcity is one of the most powerful psychological forces in human behavior, and it applies deeply in attraction. When something becomes less available, its perceived value skyrockets. The same principle governs relationships. When a man doesn't constantly make himself available, when he stops chasing, over-texting, and seeking constant attention, he becomes scarce. That scarcity doesn't just create mystery, it creates meaning. It tells a woman on a subconscious level that his time and energy are valuable. And what's valuable must be earned, not taken for granted. When a man is always available, always responding instantly, and constantly seeking to prove his interest, he removes the natural tension that keeps attraction alive. Women are drawn to men who carry an air of unpredictability, not because they like confusion, but because it signals independence. A man who's always around, always accommodating, communicates one thing: he has nowhere else to be and nothing else that matters more. That doesn't create admiration, it creates comfort. And comfort, over time, dissolves desire. Scarcity, on the other hand, creates anticipation, the sense that access to him is limited and therefore meaningful. The psychology behind scarcity is simple but powerful. People place higher value on what they fear losing. When a man stops giving unlimited access to his time, emotions, or attention, it triggers curiosity. A woman begins to question why his energy feels harder to reach. That questioning turns into thought, and thought fuels attraction. The moment she senses that she's no longer the center of his attention, something inside her awakens, the instinct to regain it. Not because of ego, but because of biology. The chase, the uncertainty, the sense of earning someone's focus, all these elements ignite emotional intensity. Scarcity is not about manipulation, it's about balance. It's about refusing to overinvest in people who haven't invested in you. It's the awareness that attention given too freely loses its weight. When a man values himself enough to withdraw from situations where his energy isn't reciprocated, he becomes someone who can't be easily accessed. That distance commands respect. It tells her that his world doesn't stop for anyone. He's not running behind affection. He's leading his own life, and that self-directed energy becomes irresistible. Most men make the mistake of thinking that constant pursuit will build connection. They believe showing how much they care will make a woman stay, but it does the opposite. It eliminates challenge, and challenge is the heartbeat of attraction. When a woman knows a man will always be there, waiting no matter how she behaves, she loses the sense of urgency. But when he withdraws, not in anger, but with quiet composure, it reintroduces uncertainty, and uncertainty keeps her emotionally engaged. She begins to wonder where his attention went, why he seems unaffected, and what she lost that she once took for granted. Scarcity also filters out superficial connections. When a man doesn't make himself available to everyone, only those who truly appreciate his presence will make the effort to reach him. His time becomes a privilege, not a given. This separation naturally attracts higher quality connections, people who recognize his value and respect his boundaries. In contrast, over-availability invites disrespect, because what's always there is easily dismissed. Creating scarcity doesn't mean ignoring or playing hard to get. It's about embodying self-prioritization. It means being so committed to your purpose, goals, and personal growth that relationships become an addition to your life, not its center. When a man lives with direction, his absence is felt more because his presence adds genuine substance. He doesn't chase validation, and that lack of need is what makes him stand out in a world full of men desperate to be chosen. The scarcity effect operates through energy as much as behavior. A man who walks away with self-assurance radiates calm authority. He doesn't announce that he's done, he simply removes himself quietly. That silence has weight. It forces the other person to reflect, to evaluate, to miss what once felt ordinary. His energy, no longer being accessible, creates emotional distance, and that distance turns into desire. It's not about manipulation. It's the natural law of value. The less something is available, the more it is wanted. Boundaries are not walls, they are standards. They define what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you walk away from. When a man sets and maintains boundaries, he's sending a powerful message. I respect myself. And that message automatically earns respect from others. Women, in particular, are deeply responsive to men who have a clear sense of self, men who don't bend their values or chase approval. Boundaries are not about controlling others, they're about controlling how you allow others to treat you. The man who can walk away when he's not valued doesn't need to demand respect, his actions command it. In relationships, boundaries create structure. Without them, emotions take over and chaos follows. When a man allows disrespect, inconsistency, or manipulation to slide in the name of love, he teaches others that his self-worth is negotiable. And once that happens, attraction fades. You cannot be respected and tolerated as an option at the same time. A man who doesn't know when to walk away becomes predictable and easy to influence. But a man with boundaries becomes someone others must rise up to meet. His standards act as a filter, separating genuine connection from emotional convenience. Many men confuse kindness with compliance. They believe that saying yes to everything, being endlessly available, and tolerating poor treatment will make them more lovable. It doesn't. It makes them forgettable. A woman may enjoy the attention temporarily, but deep down, she loses respect for a man who won't stand up for himself. Boundaries create polarity. They draw a line that says, "This is who I am, and this is how I expect to be treated." That quiet firmness is far more attractive than any words or gestures. It shows emotional maturity and self-discipline, traits that naturally draw admiration. A boundary is not something you announce, it's something you live. It's reflected in your behavior, in how quickly you walk away from drama, how calmly you respond to disrespect, and how consistently you choose peace over conflict. A man who enforces his boundaries doesn't need to threaten or prove his worth. His silence speaks louder. When he disengages from what doesn't align with him, it sends a clear message that he values his emotional energy too much to waste it on anything less than mutual respect. That kind of inner discipline doesn't just attract respect, it creates it. Boundaries also create emotional safety. Women might test limits not out of malice, but to see if the man they're with can handle emotional intensity without losing composure. When a man stays calm, doesn't react impulsively, and responds with clarity, it reassures her that he's in control of himself, not her. That emotional control builds trust, and trust deepens attraction. On the other hand, when a man becomes defensive, overly accommodating, or fearful of losing her, he loses both respect and polarity. Boundaries are what maintain the healthy tension that keeps attraction alive. They ensure that love remains a choice, not an obligation. It's important to understand that boundaries are not rigid rules meant to distance people. They are expressions of self-awareness. When a man knows who he is and what he stands for, he doesn't need to compromise that identity to keep anyone. His boundaries aren't negotiable because his values aren't either. He understands that love built on the absence of boundaries isn't love, it's dependency. And dependency always leads to imbalance. A man who prioritizes his self-respect over approval communicates that he's not afraid of loss. That fearlessness is what makes his presence so powerful. When a man walks away from situations that don't serve his growth or peace, he's not being cold, he's being clear. He's showing that his life has direction, that his emotions don't dictate his decisions, and that his worth isn't tied to how someone else feels about him. Boundaries, in their purest form, are self-love in action. They are the invisible framework that protects a man's integrity and ensures he's only surrounded by people who appreciate his energy. The man who knows when to walk away is the man who understands that respect isn't given, it's created through consistency, composure, and the courage to choose himself. True masculine energy doesn't come from dominance, aggression, or external validation. It comes from inner stability. It's the quiet strength of a man who knows his value without needing to prove it. When a man walks away rather than begging for attention, he's not being prideful. He's demonstrating that his sense of worth comes from within, not from someone's approval. Masculine energy is about direction, purpose, and presence. It's the ability to stay grounded in who you are, regardless of whether someone stays or leaves. That steadiness is what women instinctively respond to because it reflects maturity and emotional security. A man rooted in self-worth moves differently. He doesn't chase what isn't reciprocated because he understands that real connection flows both ways. He doesn't fall apart when someone pulls away because he knows that his identity doesn't depend on being chosen. That kind of detachment doesn't make him distant, it makes him powerful. Women are drawn to that strength, not because it's intimidating, but because it feels safe. A man who values himself sets the emotional tone of the relationship. His calm becomes her calm. His certainty becomes her trust. That's the essence of masculine energy. Leadership without control, strength without force, confidence without arrogance. Many men today lose their masculine center because they seek validation through constant approval. They over-explain, overgive, and overcommit in hopes of being loved. But every time a man compromises his self-respect to be accepted, he weakens his energy. He becomes emotionally reactive, easily manipulated by affection or withdrawal. A man who knows his worth doesn't operate from that space. He doesn't need to prove he's good enough. He already knows he is. That confidence creates polarity. The more he values himself, the more she values him. Attraction at its core is energetic alignment, and self-worth is the frequency that commands respect. Masculine energy is not about indifference, it's about intentionality. A man who moves with purpose doesn't waste time trying to convince someone to see his value. He spends his energy building, improving, and expanding his life. He understands that confidence is not built through attention, it's built through action. Every decision, every boundary, every walkaway moment reinforces his inner authority. Women feel that energy immediately. They sense when a man is guided by his mission rather than by emotion. That focus gives him depth, and depth is what separates an ordinary connection from a magnetic one. When a man's self-worth is intact, he's not easily swayed by external highs and lows. He doesn't lose confidence when things don't go his way because his validation isn't situational, it's internal. That level of consistency is rare, and rarity creates attraction. Women are drawn to the man who doesn't crumble under pressure or rejection. They respect the man who can remain kind, firm, and emotionally stable even when things fall apart. That emotional steadiness makes her feel safe, not because he's unfeeling, but because he's unshakable. It's the energy of someone who leads himself first, and in doing so, earns natural influence over others. Masculine energy also carries direction. A man who knows his worth doesn't wander aimlessly or wait to be told who to be. He has a sense of purpose that gives his life meaning beyond relationships. That direction makes his presence magnetic because he's moving towards something bigger than approval. He's driven by vision, not by validation. And when a woman meets a man like that, she feels the difference. He's not trying to get something from her, he's sharing something with her. His energy, his focus, his world. That dynamic shifts the relationship from dependency to partnership. Self-worth is the foundation of all attraction. Without it, masculine energy collapses into neediness or ego. With it, it becomes grounded, calm, and magnetic. The man who knows his worth doesn't seek attention. Attention naturally finds him. He's not afraid to be alone because solitude doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like power. He's not chasing love, he's attracting alignment. When his energy comes from within, he no longer fears rejection because nothing can take away what he already possesses internally. Certainty, peace, and self-respect. That's the kind of masculine energy that doesn't have to demand respect. It naturally commands it. Emotional security is one of the most powerful yet underrated qualities a man can possess. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It's about stability, the ability to stay calm, grounded, and confident regardless of what's happening around you. When a man has emotional security, he doesn't seek reassurance, he doesn't react impulsively, and he doesn't crumble under pressure. This inner steadiness radiates strength. It tells a woman that she's dealing with someone who can handle both the highs and the lows of life without losing control. That kind of energy is magnetic because it feels safe, consistent, and rare. A man who is emotionally secure isn't easily swayed by temporary emotions. He can express his feelings without being ruled by them. He doesn't need constant validation to feel important, and he doesn't measure his worth by how much attention or affection he receives. This kind of balance creates a deep sense of trust. A woman can sense when a man is emotionally grounded. His energy feels steady, his presence feels calm, and his reactions are measured. That stability allows her to relax, to open up, and to feel safe being her true self. Emotional security creates emotional safety, and emotional safety is the foundation of genuine connection. When a man lacks emotional security, the entire dynamic shifts. Insecurity often shows up as jealousy, overthinking, neediness, or emotional volatility. A man who's unsure of himself constantly seeks proof that he's loved, admired, or chosen. But the more he seeks reassurance, the more pressure he creates, and that pressure suffocates attraction. Women don't feel drawn to men who react out of fear or insecurity because that energy doesn't feel reliable. Emotional instability drains connection, while emotional emotional security strengthens it. The difference lies in where the man draws his strength from. Insecurity looks outward for validation, but security looks inward for peace. Emotional security also gives a man the power of patience. He doesn't rush situations, force outcomes, or chase people. He knows that what's meant for him will align naturally. This patience communicates confidence, not just in himself, but in life. It's the kind of energy that makes a woman feel that she doesn't need to perform, prove, or compete for his attention. His calm gives her permission to be authentic. She doesn't have to worry about triggering anger or insecurity because he's in control of himself. That emotional maturity is incredibly attractive because it represents strength that isn't loud or aggressive. It's quiet, consistent, and undeniable. Another layer of emotional security is self-awareness. A man who understands his emotions doesn't run from them or project them onto others. He takes responsibility for how he feels and doesn't use blame as a defense mechanism. When he's hurt, he processes it with clarity instead of resentment. When he's angry, he channels it with discipline instead of destruction. This emotional intelligence allows him to stay in control of his energy, which makes him appear composed and dependable. That dependability builds trust, and trust over time fuels attraction more deeply than any charm or appearance ever could. A woman feels the difference between a man who reacts and a man who responds. Reaction comes from insecurity, response comes from security. The man who responds takes a moment to think, to assess, to choose his words carefully. He's not afraid of silence because he's not afraid of losing control. That calm, collected behavior sets the tone for the entire relationship. It makes her feel that even in moments of tension or disagreement, the connection won't collapse. Emotional security brings predictability in the best sense. It tells her that this man won't disappear, explode, or break under pressure. He's stable, and that stability feels like peace. In a world where most people are emotionally reactive, the man who is emotionally secure stands out effortlessly. His energy doesn't fluctuate with circumstances, and his presence doesn't depend on external factors. He can give love freely because he's not afraid of loss. He can communicate honestly because he's not driven by ego. That kind of self-assurance creates an emotional space where others feel safe to be vulnerable. And when a woman senses that safety, she naturally softens. She becomes more open, more affectionate, and more trusting. Emotional security doesn't just attract, it sustains connection, because true attraction isn't built on excitement, it's built on peace. Rejection is often seen as a loss, but for a man who understands his value, it becomes a source of power. When a man can handle rejection without collapsing, he shifts from emotional dependence to emotional dominance. Most men take rejection personally. They see it as proof that they're not good enough or that something is wrong with them. But a man rooted in self-respect views it differently. He understands that rejection isn't the end of his worth, it's a reflection of compatibility. And when he walks away without bitterness or resistance, that composure becomes deeply attractive. It communicates strength, maturity, and emotional control, traits that women instinctively respect. There's a powerful shift that happens when a man no longer fears rejection. Fear gives away power, confidence takes it back. A man who's afraid to lose someone will overcompensate. He'll chase, explain, and negotiate for affection. But the man who accepts rejection with calm certainty communicates something few others can, that his value doesn't decrease just because someone failed to recognize it. That mindset flips the dynamic entirely. Instead of being the one seeking validation, he becomes the one who gives it through his presence, his energy, and his restraint. Women sense that strength immediately, and what was once indifference can quickly turn into curiosity. When a man doesn't chase after rejection, it triggers a psychological response called reactance. It's the human tendency to desire something more once access to it is limited or denied. The moment he pulls back, not out of anger but out of self-respect, the power shifts. His absence starts speaking louder than his words ever did. The same woman who dismissed him might start to wonder why he didn't react, why he didn't try harder, or why he seems so unaffected. That curiosity grows into attraction because it challenges her perception. Most men react emotionally, but he didn't. His calm detachment becomes a mystery, and mystery is magnetic. Rejection also acts as a mirror. It shows who truly values you and who was simply entertained by your attention. A man who understands this doesn't try to force connection where it doesn't belong. He lets go gracefully, trusting that real alignment doesn't require convincing. This kind of confidence doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from self-awareness. He knows what he brings to the table, his character, his focus, his discipline, and if someone walks away, he doesn't chase. He refocuses. That composure is rare, and rarity creates respect. In a world full of men seeking approval, the one who's unbothered becomes unforgettable. What's even more powerful is how rejection refines a man's presence. Each time he chooses to walk away instead of forcing attachment, he strengthens his emotional resilience. He becomes more selective, more intentional, and more focused on mutual energy. That shift changes his aura. He stops trying to impress and starts expressing. His energy becomes grounded, not reactive, and that stability is what draws people back in, the energy of someone who doesn't need anyone to validate him. Women are drawn to men who can detach with grace because it signals emotional strength. It shows he values peace more than persuasion, and that sense of self-control feels safe and compelling at the same time. When rejection doesn't define a man, it redefines him. It becomes proof that his self-worth is intact and unshaken. He's not chasing acceptance, he's filtering alignment. That kind of mindset makes him stand out effortlessly because he doesn't operate from fear or desperation. He understands that rejection is often a form of redirection, a signal guiding him towards something or someone better suited to his growth, and that maturity radiates through his actions. Instead of fighting for attention, he invests his energy in becoming better, sharper, and more fulfilled. That quiet progression, the ability to move forward without resentment, creates an energy that people feel even in silence. Rejection turns into attraction when a man doesn't let it define his emotional state. He understands that walking away is not defeat, but discipline. His calm reaction confuses expectations. Instead of pleading or pursuing, he simply lets go. That act alone makes him memorable. It separates him from the noise, from the crowd of men who base their worth on someone else's interest. His silence becomes his statement, his absence becomes his power, and his detachment becomes his edge. Rejection loses its sting because he's no longer chasing acceptance. He's attracting respect through emotional mastery.